see here a question about battered women. That's a very good question. We do mediation. So the question is, Veronica, AAUW focuses on situations involving battered women. Can these conflict resolution techniques work with the abuser? Sometimes, sometimes. I do want to say that, this is not all sweet and butterflies, right? In the real world, sometimes they might not work, right? And we do mediations, sometimes DV situations. And I know that, there's an imbalance of power, right? There's an imbalance of power. And so sometimes these techniques might not work with the abuser because the abuser is stuck on them, their ego and their power trip, right? And how they are, better than the other person, than their other half. So, these tips are all about thinking about the other person, right? So that's why they might not work.
Rebecca, do you have a question? You have a hand.
I do, yes.
Okay.
So I have a comment. I think a lot of the things we're talking about are so emotionally charged. And I agree with Lorraine that asking questions of the other person can help. The first thing, validate the person's feeling if that's going on, and then asking questions. I think that's the only way that that I would be able to even give my view if that other person can be taken down. So my question, Veronica, for you is, how do you keep yourself grounded? Because these things are so emotional, and maybe you said, I think 15 years you've been doing this, maybe it was more difficult. Maybe how do you keep yourself grounded so you don't, because I see people just even asking the question, you can get spun up because it's close to people's hearts, a lot of these topics.
Yes, that's a great question. My answer to that is two things: preparation and self-care. Preparation, meaning prepare yourself, if you have time for the conversation, for the dialogue. If it's maybe like a workplace situation and you're gonna have to go in and have this conversation with someone, maybe you're having a family member over and that conversation about politics that gets both of you really upset is gonna, kind of be prepared for that. Be prepared about how you're gonna respond. When I'm doing mediations, we get a file and I look through some of the facts and I can immediately see this is going to be emotionally charging. I kind of prepare myself, mentally, and that's when self-care comes. And I know it's a term that's thrown out a lot, but it's true. It's true. Doing things that make you whole, that make you happy, that keep you kind of in that space constantly, regularly, I think helps you maintain yourself grounded. You're better if you're happy between you, if you're whole, if you feel like life is good right now, you're in a better position to be able to help someone else. So preparation and self-care.
That's very interesting. Nancy?
Things we have to also realize is that, are there issues that we are bringing to the situation that are affecting? And we have to look at ourselves too. And, are we trying to prove something? Since mine, are we trying to prove we're right? Whatever they are, first start with.
Yes. And I agree with that, Nancy, in that we interpret it as being actively aware of you, where you're coming from, checking your bias, checking your ego, all this. What's my intention here? Am I going to have this conversation to prove that person wrong? Or am I going to have this conversation because I really want to understand the other person? Right. So really thinking about what your position is.
Linda, I think you had a question.
Yeah, it's more a comment, but also I wanted Veronica to say how she feels about this. In response to what Rochelle was mentioning about teachers in the classroom and trying to avoid controversial issues because it gets into conflict, I would think these tips would be excellent to use as setting ground rules up front. Before you come to the difficult conversation, have a discussion about the ground rules on how we discuss controversial topics where we're bound to have differences of opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. Whether you're doing a mediation or a community circle or any kind of dialogue with the NCRC, we always start with the ground rule.
That's right.
And rule number 1 is always let the other person finish before you say something. Rule number 2, everyone shares the airtime, right? We're all going to have the same opportunity to speak. And rule number 3 is treat the other person how you want to be treated, with respect, right? That means no eye rolls, whatever, good body language. So definitely, I agree 100%, setting your ground rules.
If I could just make a comment, Arthur Brooks, in his speech on Thursday, were you going to say that, Nancy? Made the comment about the eye rolls and said that he saw a video of himself at younger and realized that he was rolling his eyes while the other person was speaking. And so, yes. And as a matter of fact, as a union representative, I once had the very interesting conversation. I had to defend someone from eye rolling while another person was speaking and their job was at stake.
Nancy Telford
I see Pat's hand up too.
I think this discussion has been absolutely great, as was the one the other night. And just talking among ourselves, getting ideas, actually, I feel it calms me inside just talking, because then I can think through some of this stuff. And I've always been, my question previously about, your own opinion and stuff, but then taking it a step farther when you're talking about the preparation and the self-care thing. And sometimes when you're in a situation, the whole idea of saying, like you said, sometimes you just have to say, we'll have it at another time. So I was thinking, as we're talking now, it isn't our job to convince everybody else of what's right. It's our job to listen to them and then get to the point that maybe they're not going to change their opinion, and maybe it's going to be heated. So part of taking it to, you can put respectfully disagree at the beginning and at the end, because, for example, if you get to the point that you feel that you're just getting all riled up again, sometimes out of self-care, you just have to say at the end, I respectfully disagree, and maybe we can talk about this at another time, or never talk about it again. And that brings me peace, just coming to that via this discussion.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Nancy. And I saw a Pat's hand go up.
Yes.
Please. You're muted, Pat.
Pat,
No.
are you on? Oh, there she goes. Okay.
Growing up, it was always put before me that if I am going to say something, I should consider, is it true? Is it necessary? And am I saying it in a way that is respectful?
Yes.
I just said, because I run through that litany, and it has kept me from inserting my foot in my mouth on a number of occasions.
That's great, Pat. We all have a little technique or saying, right, that works for us. And these tips work, whether all trying to put them all together or one at a time. And Norlin, you let me know when my time is up, because as you can see, I can talk about this for the whole rest of the day. But
Well,
I
we've
just want
got
to give
about 10 more minutes for questions.
Okay.
And then we'll let you go or earlier, because we started you earlier. So we've kept you for quite a while here, but we're so interested in what you have to say. Do we have any more questions from anyone, or?
I wanted to share a story.
Oh, thank you.
When I kind of used the tips, and then we'll get to the question. So the other day I was doing a training. It's called the Arctic 2.0. And we talk about communication techniques, which includes some of these tips that we talk about. But the second part of that training is talking about race and racism, perceived biases, and really heavy subjects that get people upset, right? And get, like, push buttons. There's a piece in the training when we talk about institutional racism and how it affects people. And one gentleman in the training got really upset. And he said, I'm very offended. I mean, he yelled. He didn't say it, He said, I'm very upset at this. He actually used the word disgusted. He said, I'm disgusted at this. You're saying that white people are racist just because they're white. And I don't agree with this. And this is disgusting. I can't believe that they paid to do, to bring this training here. He was just outraged, right? And so me and my centered whole self, I said, let's talk about this. It would have been really easy for me to say, that's not what I said, right? I didn't say that. This is not what this training is about. But I gave him the opportunity to tell me what he meant, where he was coming from. I said, this is important. I'm glad that you bring it up. This is exactly why we have these trainings. Tell me about that. What do you mean? So I gave him the opportunity, and I could see him on the little screen, just kind of de-escalating himself. And when he finished telling me what he meant, I said, my apologies if that's how it came out, but that's not what we're advocating for. That is not what we meant. I said, what we meant is that just because it doesn't happen to you doesn't mean that it's not happening to other people. And we talked about experiences and all that good stuff. And I thought he was gonna, just kind of shut off and go away. And he actually stuck through the whole training. At the end of the training, he sent me a private chat, and he said, can I call you? Can you give me my cell phone? And I said, sure. I'm always open for conversation. So he called me after the training, like 10 minutes after. He apologized. He said, I'm so sorry for my outburst. I'm so embarrassed. All of my colleagues saw me. This was a very, very large group training that I did. He said, all of my colleagues saw me. Now they think I'm this bigoted, racist, person, and that's not who I am. It's just that those words really kind of hit the wrong button, but I could see where you were coming from. And I appreciate, he said, that you allowed me to explain myself. And so again, we disagreed, right? I wasn't going to try to change his mind. That's not my job. And I think in a regular dialogue, our jobs are not to change their minds, right? Our jobs are to hear them. And I gave him the space to hear them, and he appreciated that. Any other thoughts, questions? Thank you for the comments, Edith. Yeah, that's a good story. I like that story.
Yes.
Thank you.
Veronica, we can't thank you enough for spending this time with us, for initiating such a wonderful discussion after taking us through the training. I think I speak for everyone in saying that we've all learned a lot. It'll take a lot longer for us to put this all into practice, but you have really given us some very good ideas for going into the future, in a more conflict resolution way. And you've given us some very good tips and techniques to use. So we want to thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. My
Yes,
pleasure.
indeed.
It was a pleasure being with all of